In this tutorial, I'm going to be going over the theme customizer with a focus on the header and navigation settings. Now there's a ton of settings in the Divi theme customizer related to your navigation menu and header, and using these settings in different combinations can yield some pretty cool and unique results. So I want to kind of dig deep into those settings and show you some cool things you can do. So to access the theme customizer, you're going to want to hover over the Divi link here in your WordPress dashboard and click the theme customizer panel. And this is going to launch the theme customizer with all the different settings. And today we're going to be focusing on the header and navigation panel. So if I open up this panel, you're going to get all the settings related to the header and navigation, being this top portion here, this white bar that has my primary navigation menu, and this secondary menu here that has my social icons and a secondary menu. Now, if you have your social icons disabled and you haven't input a secondary navigation menu yet, then this bar isn't even going to show up at all. So you might not see this on your install, but if you assign a secondary nav in your appearances menus locations, then you're going to get that secondary bar, and you can adjust the appearance of that bar with the secondary menu settings over here. So I'm going to first focus on the header format. So these are some just a few settings that will drastically change the appearance of your header. The first being vertical navigation, which is probably the biggest change. When you enable this, it completely switches the format of your header and puts it over on the side here vertically instead of horizontally, which is pretty nice depending on the look you're going for. And you can also choose to hide your navigation on scroll. So if I were to enable this, then the navigation disappears until you scroll down the page, which is kind of a fun effect. And it gives you more room to kind of experiment with your header and your sliders. So if maybe you have a full screen header on your homepage and you don't want to distract the user from that, well, you can turn off navigation until they scroll. And so like when they land on your page, they get this kind of like splash page effect with the full screen header. And then when they scroll down, their navigation menu slides in like that. Now, whenever you're changing settings, you get a live preview here, as you see. But until you save and publish, these settings aren't actually being affected on the home page. So if I were to exit out of here without saving anything and go back to my live website, you'll see that my vertical navigation was never enabled and my menu is not hidden right now. So going back to the customizer then, I'm going to explore some of these other settings. So heading back to the header navigation, I'm going to take a look at the different header styles. Now we have a couple choices here. Default, which puts the logo on the left. We have centered, which puts the logo and navigation centered, but places the logo on top of the navigation. And then we have a centered inline logo, which places the logo centered in between all of your navigation items. Moving on to the primary menu bar. Like I mentioned earlier, the primary menu is this white bar here, the larger of your two menus with the logo in it. And there's a bunch of stuff you can do here, such as hide the logo image. Maybe you just want to have that fade in later on when you scroll down. You can hide it from the primary nav menu. You can make your menu full width. In this case, my screen's kind of too small to show you, but let me show you. So I'm going to enable default and then go back to primary menu and make it a full width and save and publish. And then take a look at our home page here. I'm going to refresh. You can see that it just extends the logo to the edges here, all the way to the edge of the screen. If I were to expand this even more, which is hard to see for you, but yeah, you get that kind of full screen effect in the menu. All right, heading back to the customizer. Now, some cool stuff you can do with colors and font styles in the primary menu bar to really change, the appearance of your site. For example, you can increase the height. So if your logo feels a little bit too squished, you can make the menu bigger here. You can increase the text size as well, the letter spacing between the text. You can change the font itself and the font styles. Maybe I want to make this bold and uppercase. You can see we're getting a drastically different look here in our main menu bar. And And you can adjust the colors as well. So let's say I want to, instead of using white, I want to make this, like a strong background color, like blue. So let's change the background color to blue. And since I've changed that to blue, I probably want to make my links more apparent. So I'm going to make those white. And if I were really doing this, I'd probably want to use a white logo as well, but I'm not going to bother changing that. You can imagine that's a white logo. And so yeah, there's some basic things you can do to kind of change the appearance of your primary navigation bar. But what I want to talk about next is the fixed navigation settings. And what these are, they affect your navigation bar in its fixed state, which means when it becomes attached to the top of your browser window. So if you notice when I scroll down here, the menu bar shrinks and becomes stuck to the top of the browser. We call that the fixed menu. So when it's fixed to the top of your screen, it is your fixed navigation, and then these fixed navigation settings can be used to customize the menu in that state, which means if you customize a color of your fixed navigation bar differently than you did your primary navigation state, it's going to transition into that. So we have a blue color for our background color right now. Let's say I change the fixed navigation to be green. In that case, it's going to fade from blue to green. You can also adjust the size. So as you can see, it's shrinking. If you want to make it shrink even more, you could bring down the size a bit. And then you can see you get really, really big, drastic change in size. Or you could make it bigger if you want, for whatever reason. Or just make it the same size as your primary navigation to have no transition in size. But I like it, me getting a little smaller. I think it looks nice. Another interesting thing you can do is use alpha transparencies in the colors. So, for example, if you have your big fixed navigation bar here and it's this bright green color and you can't really, you're worried that's kind of like obstructing the view of the page, well, you could just make it semi-transparent. For example, I might make it a semi-transparent black, bring down the alpha transparency, and then you can see through the menu, so it's not quite as distracting. And it transitions from that solid blue to this semi-transparent black. Now you can adjust the menu, the drop-down menu colors independently of the main menu bar. So if for whatever reason you want your drop-down menus to be a different color, you can do that. So I'm going to change the drop-down menu background color to purple. And then when I hover over here, it's going to turn purple instead of blue. And you can do that for your secondary navigation menu as well. So speaking of that, let's take a look at some of these secondary navigation menu settings. Now, as I mentioned, the primary navigation is your big navigation bar here that has your primary menu and your logo, and the secondary nav sits above it. So much like your primary nav, you can make this full width if you like. So if you want to make those match, you can adjust the text size if you think that text is a little bit too small. You can adjust the letter spacing and the font style, all of that. So if we want to make it match a little bit more, we might make it all caps, increase the letter spacing, and increase the size, and they're kind of getting a more cohesive look. And just like the primary nav, you can adjust the background color. So if I want to make this something different, you can. I might make it purple. And you can adjust the drop-down menu background color independently. For whatever reason you want to make your drop-down menu a different color. We're getting a lot of colors in here now. It's getting a little crazy, but just to show you what you can do. You can also adjust the animations that are used for the drop-down menus in both the primary and secondary headers. So if I want to make this like a slide effect, you can choose that, which looks nice. And you can do that for the primary navigation as well. Moving on to the header elements, this is where you can enable and disable items that appear in your navigation bar. So if you don't want to show the social icons or the search icon, you can disable those here. And you can adjust your phone number and email address that appear at the top here if you want to add your contact information. Now, so that was a basic overview of kind of all the different settings. Now there's also some cool things you can do, like using these settings in combination. One of the things that I like to do is change the header format to centered, and then use alpha transparency on the primary menu bar background color to bring down the opacity. So I'm going to go over to the background color. I'm going to change this to black and then bring down the opacity to something a little bit lighter. So now we have this navigation bar at the very top of our page. We can even make it a little bigger. And since it's so big and it's centered, I've brought down the alpha transparency in the background. And now we have this effect where it's showing through to the background. So for example, if I were to save and publish this and head over to our main site and actually adjust the builder settings for this page, there's some cool effects you can get with background images. So I might, let's say this is the home page of my site, I might want to use a nice background image for my slider here. So I might go over to my slider and upload a new background image for this area. And update. And so now we have this background image in our slider, and we have this transparent menu that kind of overlays it. And Divi is really smart about knowing when you use a transparent background image for your primary navigation bar, and we automatically extend the height of the first section on your page so that it has the opportunity to overlay like this without actually obstructing your content. So it's not going to overlay, the text on your slider and that kind of stuff. So you can even bring down this transparency to 0 and kind of have this cool effect where you have this, kind of floating menu and navigation. And then when you start to scroll down, it becomes fixed and shrinks to the top of your page like that. That's one example of kind of a cool way you can use these settings in combination. And it looks good with the centered inline format as well. So if I change to centered inline logo and check out that, that's a pretty cool effect as well, as you can see. So yeah, that's a basic overview of the header and navigation settings. There's a lot you can do here. So I encourage you to experiment and have fun playing with these settings.